Have you ever wondered how your parents' parenting style might affect you as an individual? We're going to talk about parenting styles today. We'll talk about attachment with babies and young children, and we'll also talk about moral development as we grow. So let's get into it. Here we go. So the first thing, attachment. What is attachment? It's the reciprocal relationship between the caregiver and the child. And this, of course, has huge effects on development. Newborns, we know right off the bat, newborns, they show preference for their caregiver's face, scent, language, only a couple hours after birth. It's amazing. There's a strong connection there. And while this physical attachment to a caregiver is extremely important, the attachment bond, that emotional connection, is equally critical. Konrad Lorenz, so he's the first guy you want to write down. Konrad, we'll talk about 3 people with attachment. Konrad, you're first. Konrad Lorenz found that some infant animals would imprint, meaning they became attached to another individual they saw shortly after birth. Now, this makes sense because usually it was their mother and they would imprint on their mother, but it doesn't always have to be the case. In this critical period, this imprinting time, it had about an 18-hour window, and it's an emotional landmark when they attached to that mother figure. And Konrad, they would remove the mom right after the mom had babies, and these baby geese, they would imprint on Lorenz. They would follow him around. They would respond to his calls, his whistles. This sounds terrible to me, but they would affectionately peck at his face. There's some old videos you could look up on YouTube, him like swimming through a pond and this little trail of like 8 little geese swimming right behind him. Kind of weird, but pretty awesome. All right, the next one is Mary Ainsworth, and she did this really big study, and it was called the Strange Situation Experiment. And she looked at different types of attachment by researching the bond between young children and their mothers. This is usually toddlers. And so in the experiment, the child was brought into a new environment, a big room, usually filled with toys. Mom would hang out. She would leave for a few minutes. There was an observer, a researcher kind of in the corner, just hanging out watching. And then she would come back. And then they tested what the kids did. And they found 3 categories that the kids kind of fell into based on their reactions. So the first group, they had secure attachment. This is about 2/3. Kids went in, they explored the area. They were a little upset when mom left, but when she came back, they would go up, they would touch, give her a quick hug, and then they went back about their business playing with the toys. So that was kind of the healthiest group, the secure attachment group. Then we have avoidant attachment. They resisted being held by mom, went explored on their own, and they didn't really want to go near her when she returned. This was like 20% of kids. And these were huge studies they did with lots and lots of children, different cultures as well. And then finally, the anxious ambivalent group, about 10%, mixed feelings with mom. Sometimes they were extremely stressed when she left, but again, they resisted her comfort when she returned. This is also called resistant attachment. Now, the interesting thing is they went through and they've done studies with adults, and about the same percentages of adults fall into these different categories based on adult relationships. So one way they did this was go to the airport, and while a couple was sitting there waiting for their flight, they would go up and say, hey, can you fill out the survey for us? This was before 9/11, and they didn't have to stop at security. They could actually go all the way up to the gate with the other person. And so they would do these surveys, and they found like about 2/3 had secure attachment, normal, like give them a hug, say goodbye. Some were avoidant, about 20%, again, were avoidant, like didn't really care, kind of standoffish, keep you at arm's length, maybe not pick you up from the airport, didn't really care. And then some were that anxious, ambivalent, or resistant attachment, and they were like the ones that would just kind of clingy, like sobbing, couldn't let the other person go. So it's interesting that these forms of attachment, some of it's genetic and some of it's through parenting, but these really stayed with people throughout their lifetime. All right, Harry Harlow, he and his wife, Margaret, they did maybe one of the saddest studies in psychology, but again, they kind of stumbled upon this, and they were researching monkeys and kind of went into the maternal separation and dependency and what that looked like with monkeys. They were doing some other research with monkeys. They were already separated from their mothers, but they were diapered, and they had these cloth diapers, and they found when they would take the diapers away to clean them, the monkeys would kind of freak out. And then when they get the cloth diapers back, they would really hold on to them and really cling to them. And they were like, it's interesting. And so he came up with this experiment. He raised infant monkeys with 2 artificial mother figures. One was made of a wire frame, and it had food. It had a bottle with milk attached to it. The other one was a cloth monkey without food. I got a picture here for you in a second. At the time, most people, everybody in the field thought attachment was formed because of the food that was provided. But they kind of went against this. But what they found was that the separated babies actually preferred the cloth surrogate mothers, even though they didn't have food. And you can see in the picture there, you got the monkey, the wire mother in the back, and she's got the little bottle right here. And there's even pictures of monkeys when they're kind of holding on with their feet to the cloth mother. They don't want to let them go, but they're leaning over and getting a drink of milk from the bottle from the wire mother. So he suggested this attachment was formed due to physical contact comfort. And this has been found true throughout. They actually, in the neonatal intensive care unit with premature babies, they kind of used to think that these babies are very fragile, immune systems are fragile, they don't want to get them sick, so they would kind of not touch them too much. And they kind of found this here. They needed that physical touch, and they actually have volunteers that go into hospitals now just to hold babies, just to get that close physical contact comfort. They also found that monkeys raised with these surrogate mothers, they were more frightened in new situations compared with those with their real mothers. All right, Diana Baumrind, she researched parenting styles and came up with 3 types of parenting styles that most parents would fall into. First were the authoritarian parents, strict standards, strict punishments. I kind of think like military dad, like black and white, you do this is right, this is wrong, no gray area whatsoever. Obedient attitudes are valued more than discussions of the rationale of the rules. And these children are likely to distrust others while being more withdrawn from their peers. Now, think about your own parents, think about friends' parents, think where do they all kind of fall into. So that's the first one, authoritarian, kind of that hard-fisted, obedient parent. Then the opposite side of that, we have the permissive parents. No big guidelines for children. Rules change regularly. They're rarely enforced consistently, which is so important, especially for younger children. And they found that these kids tend to have poor emotional control and are more dependent than their peers. And finally, there's the authoritative, right? The sweet spot in the middle. So you got authoritarian, strict rules, permissive, just kind of anything goes. And then authoritative parents, consistent, reasonable standards are set. Rules are discussed, independence encouraged. So this is the big thing here. It's not necessarily the rule, but hey, are you understanding why we have the rule? We're okay making adjustments. This is our end goal. It's not for you just to be obedient. It's for you to become an individual person making good choices. These kids perform better academically across the board, and they do better with social skills. All right, Lawrence Kohlberg. We're wrapping it up here, guys. Moral development. This one's awesome. So how our ability to navigate ethical situations changes. What he did is he interviewed kids a specific moral dilemma. He didn't really care about the answer. He cared about the rationale, like how they got to their answer. And so he split them up based on their answers. He found 3 different levels, and you want to know the 3 levels. The 6 stages, there's 2 stages for each level. Don't worry too much about those, but definitely know the 3 levels. So the first level he called pre-conventional. This is infancy to 5, and it's really about rewards and punishments. So first he would say you want to avoid punishment, and then later on it's getting rewards. How can we figure out to get the good stuff? And that's up to 5. So preschooler, maybe kindergartner, they're kind of in that realm. All right, then conventional, this is elementary school, probably through middle school. Conformity, worried about social order. What are my peers doing? Think about when you were in middle school, right? You're pretty concerned with like, what are the people wearing? What are the people doing? How they talk? And we want to get in those cultural norms and make sure we're fitting in. So that's the conventional stage. And then the last stage, post-conventional, kind of high school through adulthood. Social contracts, universal ethics, right? What's the right answer for society as a whole rather than just me and my own concerns? All right, and then our last person here, Carol Gilligan, and she worked with Kohlberg, but talks about morality and specifically gender. Now, she was a colleague and a friend of Kohlberg. They worked together for a long time, but she became critical of his theory, and probably rightly so. Kohlberg's research was based only on interviews with males, so he left out all females, that entire segment of the population. She believed it was inaccurate to assume the same moral development with females. She theorized that women make moral decisions based more on situational factors and relationships. Now, research doesn't really support her theory, but it's super important because it does demonstrate the importance of considering gender differences in research. And you have to if you're going to look at a good sample of the population. All right. I have a little video clip right here. I'm not going to show it right now. Link down below. It's a news report, and it's great. It's great. They go into this baby lab, and there's all these experiments on infants, 6-month-old, 3-month-old, and they look at like, do they have morals? Can they make moral decisions? And then they go through later on and test like upper elementary school kids, and it's awesome. It's awesome. So you should check it out. It's down below. I want you to think about two things. One is, do the kids act in a way consistent with Kohlberg's levels? So think about, it's going to be pre-conventional for those babies and then conventional for those elementary, middle school kids. Think about, does it fit? And then think about, they also have a reason why they think the experiments came out the way they do. Do you agree with that, or do you think it's more Kohlberg's? It's awesome. You should definitely check it out. And then also, how is bias and fairness tested in these experiments? So they look at, like, can they be biased? Check it out. It's a really good video. All right, you've made it, guys. Time for a couple review questions, then we're done. So who, according to Mary Ainsworth, would have secure attachment? Here's a couple scenarios. Would it be Chris, who is indifferent when his mother leaves and when she returns? Would it be Jack, who cries when his mother leaves and seeks physical contact from her when she returns before beginning to play independently? Mark, who cries when his mom leaves but doesn't seem to care when she returns? Kevin, who cries when his mom leaves and clings to her when she returns? Or Logan, who happily plays with the stranger who is present when his mother leaves? All right, move my face. There's your clue right there. Give an answer. It is B for Bengal tiger, the biggest of the big cats. Pretty awesome. All right, next question. During a discussion about cheating in school, one student says cheating is wrong, rules should be followed. Kohlberg would say he is in what stage of moral development? Is it non-conventional, pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, or advanced conditional? Oh man, the AP exam, they will throw in fake answers like that all the time. Watch out for them. Answer is C for can. I should have done carbonation. That would have been way more creative. I'm sorry, I'll be better. Last question. Okay, what's this guy doing over here? Harry Harlow, his experiment with monkeys and surrogate mothers emphasized the importance of, you could probably guess it. Is it satisfying hunger, body temperature, fulfilling needs, intrinsic motivation, or physical contact? Yeah, you know. E for exercise. Well done, my friends. We made it through. Okay, last thing. Please don't skip this. I know you want to, but don't skip it. Go over your notes, look over them. Give me like a one sentence, like 20 words, one sentence summary. It's powerful in helping you remember things. Do this again tomorrow. I do it again in 3 days, and boom, it'll be stuck in your brain. You guys are awesome. Have a great day. It's 10:33. Okie dokie. Happy snow day! Although it's not really a snow day, it's a cold day. We had no school today because it was so cold. And now I'm going to go for a run later. Wish me luck.